Hi, Joe Cerrone. Welcome to our weekly meeting for CAD 116, Basic AutoCAD. This week, we're going to work on dimensioning. Dimensioning is covered in chapters 16 through 19. We're going to complete one of these drawings as shown here. You can choose either a mechanical or an architectural drawing. Our chapter objectives are listed here for our textbook readings. We're going to work with dimension styles, be able to describe these different dimensioning standards, and to be able to manage different dimensioning styles. We're going to look at linear and angular dimensioning techniques. We'll also look at alternate dimensioning practices, things like being able to represent those dimensions in inches and millimeters. As we go through and work this assignment, what you're going to do is to follow the PowerPoint or read the PowerPoint. PowerPoint basically goes through and explains different dimensioning techniques and how we work with different dimensioning. So we'll start off with dimensioning terminology, talk a little bit about associative and non-associative dimensioning, and then these different techniques like linear, aligned, ordinal, radius. They're really quite straightforward. When we look at our terminology, what we want to be able to do is get our vocabulary so that we can speak the language. And so what we want to do is to be able to understand what a leader is, what a dimension line is, dimension text, because you will see these in the software when we start to work these drawings. Associative versus non-associative dimensions are the ability for the CAD system to update the dimensions when the drawings are changed. So if I go to one of my drawings here, so for example, if we were to look at this cam here, this mechanical drawing, and if I were to go and stretch some of the geometry right here, I'm going to turn on my ortho so that it doesn't go crazy. And I'll stretch it from here and I'll just lengthen it. Notice how the dimension updates for the linear dimension from 4 inches to whatever we change it to. That's what's called associative dimensioning. And that's one of the great things about working with CAD, is that the dimensions will automatically be updated if they're set as associative. Non-associative dimensions will not. So if we were to explode a dimension and then change it, the dimension would stay the same. And we want to be careful about that because that can cause problems down the line. So if I were to explode this dimension of 4 inches, and then I were to stretch it, you'll notice that the dimension doesn't change. I'm going to pause the video and we'll come back to it. Resuming. So it's not a good idea to explode dimensions because it basically turns them back into line geometry, and then the updates will not, when we change the geometry, the dimensions will not be updated. So these are the association rules. And then as we look at how to create these dimensions, we'll look at linear dimensions, aligned dimensions. We won't do ordinal dimensioning on this exercise. We'll do that in the 117 course. Radial dimensions, arcs, baseline. And so the chapter does a really good job of showing you all the different ways to dimension things. But essentially, when you dimension objects, you can click on them and then you can update those locations of those dimensions by selecting the grips and making them hot. If you double click on a text dimension, and it's a fast double click, so some of the double clicking is kind of like you can see there. And then you can see that the dimension text is kind of locked in, but you could say something like typical. This is a common practice, and we can green check mark it here. And so you can add annotation and words to your dimensions. Continuing on, there's a number of different things that we can do to just make our drawings look neater and cleaner. We can use these multi-leaders to be able to call out different features on the drawings and put a balloon. We can use tolerances. Tolerances will allow us to add a plus or minus of whatever we set that to. And so it's not uncommon in the aerospace industry to have something plus or minus 0.0005 or 5/10. And it's a very, very precise measurement. And so as we start to work with mechanical design, what we want to do is to be able to understand that there is no perfect zero. Everything is a little bit bigger, or a little bit smaller. And by using tolerances, you give the production people the ability to work within that range of measurements. And so this part may be 1 inch plus or minus 0.010, 10 thousandths. And that way, if he makes it 1.005, it's within tolerance and it's an acceptable part. And so that's a very common practice. And then GD&T, geometric dimensioning and tolerancing, gives us the ability to add symbols for flatness, material conditions, datums. We want to make sure that we use center marks. And then there's just some other basic features. So go through and look at the PowerPoint. We have videos. The video here for 7 shows the construction techniques to create this geometry here. Back to the main splash page. And actually I have to be a little careful because it goes to a different page sometimes. And then here's our assignments. And so here's the architectural assignment. People that are working towards something like an interior design certification or facilities or something other than mechanical will use drawing units like the architectural drawing is set up, where measurements are in feet and inches. Here's our mechanical. And then the bonus. Okay, so that's our weekly Zoom meeting, and this is our list of activities. Choose one drawing, either the mechanical or the architectural, place it in the Dropbox, and make sure that you take the chapter quiz. With that, I'm going to stop this Zoom recording and open things up for questions.